this top, I used 2 balls of this cotton loops and threads weight 4 yarn. However, keep in mind that the amount of yarn will vary depending on the size of your top. And I also used a 5mm hook, but this top is very adjustable, so if you want your stitches to be tighter, the hook size will not alter the outcome of the top. And you'll also need a darning needle as well as a pair of scissors to snip and weave in your ends. Okay, so the first step is to chain the amount of chains necessary to wrap around your chest. You don't need a tape measure for this. You could really just chain in increments of 10 and see which one fits the best. I knew that I didn't want the back pieces to touch, so I made sure to make my chain less than the measurement of my chest. However, this is really up to personal preference. You could choose whether or not you want the seam in the back to basically touch, or if you want to be able to see the crisscross weaving lace up part of it, essentially. So I decided to do 70 chains, and it's important that whatever you do chain, make sure that it is a multiple of 10. So if you chain 70 for instance and you decide that you want it to be a bit bigger, go all the way up to 80 chains, and this is just necessary for the pattern's sake. So I'm going to chain 70 and then we'll move on to the next step. Okay, now that I've chained 70, I'm going to chain one more, making that 71, and that's because I'm going to start half double crocheting all the way down the chain. And this is also another personal preference thing. I'm going to be half double crocheting in the back loop of the chain, just because I like the way that it looks later on when we're doing some of the finishing touches. But you can just go into the chain normally, it's up to you. But yeah, so chain 1, then half double crochet all the way down the chain. Okay, so here I am completing the last half double crochet of this row, and from here on out you're basically going to be creating several rows until it's enough to cover your chest. So we're going to chain 1, turn our work, and then proceed to create half double crochets all the way back down the row, and doing this over and over again until it's enough to cover your chest. Everyone's going to be different, but for me personally, I did 14 rows. So yeah, I'm going to do that and then we'll move on to the next step. So I'm finishing the last half double crochet, and now I'm not going to chain, and that is because I'm going to create a stacked double crochet instead of chaining 2, since now we're going to be working with double crochets. So you can chain 2 and skip that first stitch, or basically count the chain 2 as your first double crochet, or you can create this stacked double crochet by doing a single crochet in that first stitch, and then inserting your hook into the left loop of the single crochet, yarn over, pull through, and then create another single crochet on top of that. And then from here on out, you are going to be following this pattern in a set of 10. So this is why the multiple of 10 matters, because the pattern will be for this first row of the pointe-tail kind of fabric looking pattern is to do 4 double crochets, which you see me doing here, and then chain 2 to create a hole, which means that you're going to skip the next 2 stitches and do another double crochet into that 3rd stitch. And then you are going to complete 3 more double crochets. So the pattern is 4 double crochets, 2 chains where the hole is going to be, and then another 4 double crochets. And you're going to repeat this pattern all the way down the whole row. So once I complete that 4, you can see it is 1, 2, 3, 4 double crochets, skip 2 stitches with the chain 2s, and then another 4 double crochets. So we're gonna continue that on by starting once again with the 4 double crochets and repeating so on and so forth. Okay, so this is what the first row of the pattern should be looking like. You should have 4 double crochets on each end, and then 8 double crochets in between each hole, basically. And now we are going to turn our work once again and complete another stacked double crochet. This is just how I'm going to be starting the row each time from here on out, but remember, it's totally fine if you do the chain 2 instead, as long as you make sure that you are counting that chain 2 as your first double crochet. So for this row, I'm going to start with the stacked double crochet, and then the pattern for this row is going to be doing 2 double crochets, which you can see I'm doing here, and then you're going to chain 2 to create the next hole of the pattern, and then you're going to do 2 double crochets in the hole of the row we just did prior. Now we're going to chain 2 once again to create the second hole, and you're going to skip 2 stitches and then double crochet into that 3rd stitch. Then we're just going to do 1 more double crochet, and this shows us our pattern of 10 stitches that we're going to repeat all the way down this row. So it is 2 double crochets, then chain 2 while you're skipping 2 stitches, and then you're going to do 2 double crochets into the hole of the row prior, and then chain 2 to create the next hole, so skipping 2 stitches, and then do 2 double crochets to end it off. So we're going to repeat this pattern all the way down the row. So I'm starting once again with the 2 double crochets, then I'm going to chain 2, skip those 2 stitches, and double crochet into the hole 2 times, chain 2 once again, skip 2 stitches, and put my next 2 double crochets starting at the 3rd stitch. And then we're just going to repeat this all the way down the row. So here's what it should be looking like now. In the next clip, my toe somehow made it into the frame. If you're wondering why there's a cat emoji there. But anyways, we're going to be repeating what we did for that first row of the pattern. So we're going to turn our work and then start with the 4 double crochets. So, well, the first one is technically a stacked double crochet. So then we're going to do another double crochet. And then after that, we're going to do 2 double crochets into the hole. And that will give us our first 4 double crochets. As you can see here, it's following that first row where we're beginning the pattern. So now to continue with it, we're going to do the chain 2. And then we're going to do 2 double crochets into the next gap. And then to finish off the pattern of 10, we're going to do 2 more double crochets, and then we're going to be repeating this sequence throughout the whole row, just like we did the first time around, except those double crochets are going to be going into the holes when necessary. So just go ahead and start repeating the sequence with the 4 double crochets and then move on from there. And we'll continue on with the next step. So here's the completed first grouping of the pattern, I guess you can say. And to separate this one from the next one, we are going to do a full row of double crochets. So we're just going to turn the work and then do the stacked double crochet and then double crochet all the way down the row. And every time you get to one of the gaps from the previous row, make sure you're putting 2 double crochets in that space. But yeah, just double crochet all the way down the row. Here's what that row should look like. And now what we're going to do is to create the next clump of the pattern. It's going to be the same exact sequence with the 10 stitches, except you're going to begin each row with 5 extra double crochets. So, for example, before we would start the pattern with 4 double crochets. Now it is going to be 9 double crochets, but then after that the pattern remains entirely the same. So you're going to do an initial 5 double crochets and then the 4 to start the pattern. And then once you do that, it'll be the chain 2 and then 4 more double crochets. And then after that, you're going to remain doing the normal pattern of 4 double crochets, chain 2, 4 double crochets, all the way down the row until you get to the point where you're going to have another 5 stitches left and you're going to end it off with 5 more double crochets. So if that sounds a little confusing, I'll show you what I mean. As you can see, it starts with the 9 double crochets, and then you're going to carry out the pattern as normal, and by the end you should also have 9 double crochets at the end. Hopefully that makes sense, but I will show you what that will look like right now. So here I am creating the last gap of this row, and you're going to notice that instead of doing the last final 4 double crochets, there's actually going to be 5 more empty stitches. So all that means is you're going to double crochet all the way down to the end, which will give you 9. And hopefully that clears that up if there was any confusion. And basically that's the only difference between these 2 clumps of the pattern, is that when you're doing every other clump of it, depending on how long you want your top to be, you're going to just offset the next clump by 5 stitches, but after you started off with that 5 stitches, you just return to the pattern as normal and then end it off with another 5 stitches. Sorry about my phone dinging every 5 seconds. But yeah, here's what that is looking like by the time you get to the end of that row. And now when we turn our work, the normal second row of the pattern would be to do 2 double crochets, but since we're offsetting it by 5, we're going to add an extra 5 stitches in the beginning, so you're really going to start off with 7 double crochets. But remember, it's 7 double crochets, but then you return back to the original pattern. So it would normally be 2 double crochets, chain 2, 2 double crochets, chain 2, then 2 double crochets, repeated all the way down. But now this time you're going to start with 7 double crochets, chain 2, then do 2 double crochets, chain 2, then 2 double crochets, and start the pattern over just normal, not with an extra 5 double crochets, all the way down till you get to the end of the row. And then you're going to return back to doing you're going to add 5 more double crochets at the end, but that's the only difference. It's still the normal pattern. By now, you should clearly be able to see how this group is offset from the initial grouping of the pattern we created. And as long as everything looks fine, you can finish off this group by starting again with the 9 double crochets, and then the chain 2, and then the 4 double crochets, and then just repeating the first initial pattern. And then I decided to add another row of the first grouping of the pattern, and it's entirely up to you at this point though how far you want to take the pattern. So if you want it to be longer, just keep repeating the different groupings, either the regular grouping where there's no offset and then followed by the offset one. But it's entirely up to you. I decided to do one more grouping of just the regular initial part of the pattern that we started with, and then after that I ended it off with another row of double crochets. And once you are at the point where you know that you want to stop, we can move on to the next part, which will be finishing it up with the string that is going to tie the tube top together. And yeah. So to finish it off, it's going to be pretty simple. All I do is chain 1 after I've done my final row of double crochets, and I'm just going to single crochet along the edge of the whole entire top, and that's just about it, except you're going to see once we get to this first corner, aka the top corner of the top, you're going to basically, this is when you're going to make the straps that are going to hold it all together. So let me show you how to do that. But for starters, you're just going to single crochet up the whole entire side of the tube top. we have single crocheted all the way up the side of the top, the next step is to take the loop that's on the hook and pull it out so that it is long enough to use as the string to lace up the back of the tube top. So for this, I use this mat that I have as a guide, but really you can use anything as long as you are able to hold it up to whatever your method of measurement is, and you're able to duplicate it for the other strap. It's gonna work perfectly fine. So I just used this mat and I wrapped the string around until I felt like it would be long enough, and I would estimate that mine was probably around 3 feet long. So if you want to do exactly what I did, 3 feet is around what my measurement was for my string, but just know that everything will be fine as long as you feel like there's enough to lace up the back. And yeah, so the next step is to take the long string, the long loop, and wrap it around the working yarn in a knot, as you can see that I'm doing here. This is just so you're able to continue on single crocheting along the top, and now this first strap will be secured to use as the string to lace up the back. And what I'm doing here is I'm tying knots at the end just to make it a little more complete and neat looking. However, if you are going to do this, I'd probably save this step until after you use the needle to weave it through the back, because it was giving me a hard time trying to pull through the knot and the rest of the string through to lace up the back. So just a thought, in case you were thinking of doing this, I'd maybe save this step for the very end, but just to put it out there in case you want to also finish yours the same way that I did. And yeah, now our next step is to single crochet all the way across the top, so then we can meet the other corner where we're going to add the second strap. So to do this, I inserted my hook and yarn over it and pulled it through so that I can essentially create my first loop for my single crochet. And then now I'm just going to, well, here's me struggling, but now I'm just going to single crochet all the way along the top, and there's really nothing crazy to this step. Just go all the way to the other end, and then we're going to repeat the same step that we did with the first strap to make the second one. And yeah, we'll catch back up on the next step. So here I am again. I have pulled out the loop on my hook extra long so that it can be used as my second strap or lace up string, and I'm just making sure that it's the same length as the other one by using the same board to measure it. And then I'm going to once again take the big loop and wrap it around the working yarn. Just ignore that end right there, and I'm just pulling it through to secure it. And then I'm going to do the same thing again where I insert my hook so that I can pull up the working yarn and start single crocheting once again along the other side of the top. So by this time we're now down to the bottom of the top, and all we're going to do is chain one and then single crochet all the way across. and this is basically it. After we meet the end of where we, or get back to the beginning where we started all the single crochets, all we have to do is snip the ends, weave them in, and then we're going to lace up the back, and we're just about done. So here I am just tying the final knot, and then I'm just going to snip and weave in this tail, and you can do this whatever way you like. Now all that's left to do is lace up the back, and I did this just by taking my darning needle and feeding the string through the border of single crochets. It's up to you how many times you decide to cross and feed it through, but this is why I said I'd recommend not tying the knots at the end of each string quite yet, just because it was kind of a struggle to put it through the needle and also just to pull it through the single crochets. Okay guys, this is the finished tube top. I really hope you enjoyed my first tutorial, and please let me know in the comments if you made this top, or if there's anything I can do to make my next tutorial better, or if there's any video you would like to see me make in the future. So once again, thank you guys so much for watching. Like and subscribe if you want to see more of my content. Bye!